really excited.
We should introduce your friend as well.
I'm Harrison. I've been following you for years, Richard,
Nice.
and
Well, you
yeah, I've
must
been
be
a
a genius.
fan. I wish, yeah, not quite.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So what are we talking about today, guys?
Yeah. So,
My headline says Bitcoin to 100K.
yep.
Is
Or
Bitcoin going
what
to
about
100K
maybe?
or
Yeah.
10K?
What about hex to $1?
Yeah, could do that too. It's more likely.
Yeah, for
probably.
sure. So, I mean, we did a show on Harrison and I. For those watching, we did a show on our channel on Cryptorelli, my YouTube, and we weren't hex holders. We're not shilling our bags. We just had an open conversation about hex, and I think the community really appreciated it because we were just having a conversation. We're trying to seek the truth, get to the bottom of it, understand the project better without being like, everyone buy hex. Hex is going to the moon. So, yeah, we wanted to learn more about the project, kind of have a interview from people that perhaps weren't, hex holders, ardent fans, but ardent like.
I think the
pumping
problem with talking to non-hex holders is that they're stupider. Like truthfully,
Probably.
it
I
would
was
be
telling
like
you this
I want
off the
to talk
stream.
to people that like motorcycles that don't have motorcycles. You're like, nah, like they just know less. Hexagons are
I
really
actually-
smart.
I think I might be in that middle IQ, and I said this on my show where like I'm not smart enough to get it. Maybe I'm not dumb enough to get it. I'm in between.
I can
actually
explain this to
trying
you so
understand.
easy, bro. It's gonna be so easy.
So that's why we're here. You're gonna be able to convert two people potentially in real
Sure.
time.
Okay.
So I guess our first question is just like, what do you see the end game of Hex being? Like,
So
what do
let's-
you see
so
it
let's-
becoming in like 10 years?
Let's skip the first question, and
Sure.
let me try and elucidate Hex's amazing properties in a different way. Do you understand Bitcoin? Do you know how Bitcoin works?
Yeah, I think I understand Bitcoin very well. I think
Okay.
Harrison does too.
Nice. Well, for those guys viewing that may not understand how Bitcoin works, I'm going to try and explain it very simply as well. And when I say simply, I mean really, really simply. Okay. Bitcoin, it is an Excel spreadsheet that lives on the internet that has everyone's money on it, and then you can spend if you have your password. And then it inflates at about 2% a year inflation to pay people to keep the spreadsheet honest. And that's it. That's all Bitcoin is. So what is Hex? It's that with two changes. Instead of inflating to pay people to secure the network, we inflate to pay people to secure the price. So our inflation goes to people that lock their coins up so they can't sell them, so the price goes up. And instead of using Bitcoin miners, we use Ethereum miners. And that's it. There you go. I've just explained all of Bitcoin to you, and I've just explained Hex to you. It's really super easy and super simple. Took about 45 seconds, minute.
Yeah.
Yep.
Harrison, you want to shoot?
Yeah,
I know
so-
you had a question on this.
This actually gets to one of my biggest sticking points that I had is there's an APR associated with with investing your tokens, locking
Yep.
them up,
Yes.
and I know that can go as high as about 37% approximately.
Actually, it goes much higher. That's the average. That's the
okay,
average
that's-
that people receive. So if you stake shorter than average, you'll get less. So like a 1-year stake might be like 18% APR. But mind you, that APR number is a lie. The actual APR is millions of percent, but it's too big of a number to show people. It scares them. So if you count your APR in dollars, it's millions of percent. But if you count your APR in just Hex, then it's, in between 18 and 60, depending on how long you stake.
Right. So my key issue with it is when you borrow money, typically, or when you lend money, typically they generate a yield by doing something productive with the money. And I know you've given the counterpoint that the Federal Reserve technically just lends them 10 times whatever you give the bank. That is true, but ultimately your deposit does create their ability to then lend out 10 times that amount of money into a productive use in the economy. Theoretically,
Productive,
starting
huh?
a business. Starting a business.
Yeah, there's a lot of
buying
lot of
real estate.
productivity in the economy. GDP is really flying. No, actually, it's just a Rube Goldberg machine. So, one, Hex is more similar to Bitcoin than it is to a CD. Hex really has absolutely no similarity to a CD whatsoever. None. So like CDs don't have high volatility, they have extremely low volatility. CDs are traditionally denominated in the dollar, which only goes down in value, almost never up. It's lost 92% of its purchasing power over the last 80 or 90 years, I believe. So, you know, I'd not, other than the fact that you just want to make more money on your money, there isn't any similarity between HEX and a normal CD whatsoever. Now, for fun, so since HEX is most similar to Bitcoin, Bitcoin generates yield as well. It just sucks, and it just pays it to miners to destroy the environment. So in Bitcoin, the inflation goes to hardware manufacturers, which aren't in America. They're just weird foreign companies that test the hardware and take all its profitability before they actually ship it to you. And the first 2 weeks of profitability is half that the machine will ever generate. So being delayed by 2 weeks jacks you for half of your profit. And what do they do with the money that they get from the Bitcoin inflation? They dump it for electricity to pollute the environment, or you could say only 20% of that pollutes the environment. But okay, it's 20% of a quite large number. HEX doesn't have those problems. HEX doesn't pollute the environment to secure its chain because we piggybacked ETH, which is already paying all that horror fee on their own. They're already, ETH miners are already dumping the ETH price to secure the ETH chain. We're just piggybacking on that. So we don't have to, we're a hybrid proof of work, proof of stake network where our inflation only comes from proof of stake and our transactions only come from proof of work. But, that proof of work is already massively subsidized by the ETH guys paying all of the costs. When you're an ETH miner, you don't earn HEX and you don't dump HEX to pay for electricity, but you do earn ETH and you do dump ETH. So we removed a giant negative externality, which is why inflation in our system is unlike inflation in any other system. You don't need to sell the HEX inflation to pay for negative externalities, but you do in Bitcoin and Ethereum. So comparing our inflation rate to their inflation rates is a little bit silly. And comparing our yield to the yield of a time deposit in the bank is also silly. But for fun, just to educate everyone at home about time deposits, your money doesn't get lent out. Are you listening? When you give your money to the bank, it doesn't get lent out. It's not an asset to the bank. It's a liability. They owe it to you. So what do they do with it? They let it sit there and act as a reserve to get leveraged up tenfold and get 10 times the free money from the government. And what is that money the government gives them? Inflation. Aha. So in fact, when you put your money in the bank, anyone that gets yield gets it from inflation. Dun, dun, dun. And where do Bitcoin miners get their yield? Inflation. And where do HEX stakers get their yield? Inflation. And so, every proof of stake network or every proof of work network operates by the same principle. And by the way, Bitcoin went up, 6.9 million X from a penny. So its pay for inflation model seemed to work just fine. Ethereum went up from 31 cents, unless you caught the wick, down to 15 on Kraken, up to 5,000. So the model seems to work just fine. And it's the same model that HEX has. So, go ahead. So
is the reason for the high yields on
the reason
HEX,
the yield is so high is because the staking participation is so low. If the staking participation was 100%,
right? That was my question.
Sure.
Because the origin address, presumably, and again, we don't know who owns it, so no claims there. But the origin address presumably isn't staking, and they own a large percentage of the token. So is it because the origin address isn't staking, so that yield is then higher for everyone else because there's less tokens staked? Is like a large part of it.
Regardless of whom is not staking their coins, only around 10 or 11% of coins are staked, which 10x is the 3.69 average.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And it's just the same thing as a Bitcoin miner. So if you were the only Bitcoin miner, it cost you $1 to mine Bitcoin on your laptop, then you'd be making an absolute killing. So once you just look at HEX as Bitcoin with a proof of work change from destroy environment to lock up coins to support price, everything's really easy and really clear. Like staking your HEX is like getting free Bitcoin mining machines that run without electricity. It's awesome.
I get that. One of the things that I thought about in terms of money is that money tends to one. There tends to be a convergence on society as a store of value. So do you see this competing with Bitcoin? Again? There seems to be a convergence with society on most efficient money, like gold,
No,
right? The world
not true.
converged on.
Nope. That's not true. It's not true at all. Originally, we had sound money. It was backed by metals. Then it was backed by crappier metals. So they switched from gold to silver. Then it was backed by nothing. They like to say it's backed by guns. But if it was backed by guns, the value would be going up, not down, because we got more guns. Doesn't make any sense. So this concept of fiat currencies, of which all have gone to zero over time,
Right.
it's only a 50-year-old experiment that happened with the Nixon crisis, where he just depegged, he broke the Bretton Woods Agreement and just depegged the dollar from gold. It was like, lol. And you can see it on every chart. So like there's a website called WTF Happened in 1971, and you see every financial chart get totally wrecked in 71 or 72 or 74, some early 70s number. And, you know, so this idea that like society converges on money, not true.